Welcome to another edition of SVSU Red Alert, your weekly update on Saginaw Valley State University athletics. I'm your host, JJ Boehm. The SVSU football team had a dramatic homecoming victory over Ferris State, and now they get ready for the Axe Bowl. We'll review all of that with SVSU head football coach Jim Collins and get an update on cross country with Tony Philippek. That's all ahead on this edition of SVSU Red Alert. Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. The SVSU football team certainly made it dramatic in their homecoming victory over Ferris State, 31-24, the final score in overtime. I'm joined by SVSU head coach Jim Collins. And Coach, I know you probably don't always like it to be that dramatic, but I'm sure you're happy to get the victory.
Well, exactly. And you know, JJ, we've always had tough games against Ferris, you know, going back long before I was at Saginaw Valley. It's a great rivalry, and they're a good football team, and we knew it was going to be a battle to the end. And, you know, I had talked to the team earlier in the week. I said, if this thing goes past 4 quarters, we've got to be prepared for it, and we've got to be the team that outwills them in overtime. And fortunately, we were.
You've had 3 home games this year. 2 of them are decided in the final minute, and then this one goes to overtime. So fans are definitely getting their money's worth.
You know, our players are getting their money's worth as well, and, you know, the coaches and the coaches' wives and all the fans included. But, you know, that's the fun thing about the game. We knew that about our league, that it's a very good league, a very competitive league, and you know, most of the games are going to get decided by a touchdown or less, and overtime seemed apropos this week.
And it was an interesting game, too, in that you really seemed to control the game in the first half, took the lead into the locker room. Ferris controlled the game for most of the second half, but then you wind up going to overtime, and your team definitely played better in the overtime session.
You know, we really lost momentum in the third quarter. We didn't have a very good quarter offensively. We had 3 3-and-outs, and it gave Ferris some momentum to get back into the game and then take the lead. But our guys were determined in that fourth quarter. The 2 times we had the ball in the fourth quarter, we drove down the field, got stopped on 4th down. The defense got the ball back for the offense, and we were able to go in there and tie the game. And then obviously in overtime, we played a great overtime session. And you know, that was what was great to see, because it was a hard-fought game, and both teams had to have been physically beat up and mentally tired, and we were able to get it done in that overtime period.
And not only that, but you think about that play that the defense had late in the game. You did a good job forcing turnovers all night, but as you said, when you're stopped there on 4th down in the red zone, your defense comes right back, forces a fumble, and you get the ball back.
That was huge. And you know, we had a tough go of it there in that second half of being able to convert and get the ball in the end zone. And you know, it was really frustrating, and I think that last time we got stopped, it was the ultimate in frustration because we were so close. We were knocking on the door. But for the defense to come up big, and you know, they played hard and they hit hard and played physical the whole game. And I thought Ferris did a great job of running that offense. But you know, fortunately, we were able to force the turnover and get the ball back and go in to tie the game up.
And again, we'll talk about Tim Hogue on the offensive side of the ball. We've got Andre Griffin joining us this week as well. But on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of guys with some key plays. But Jeff Heath had an amazing game. I think finished with 18 tackles, deflected 1 pass that was intercepted. He recovered that fumble late in the game, so he really stepped up at key moments.
Stepped up big. And you know, against an option team and a team like Ferris, your guys on the perimeter have to play great, because the whole idea is to try to get that ball forced to the perimeter and play off of blocks and make tackles, and Jeff had a great day doing that. But I thought all of our defensive backs played really well. Jeff stands out statistically, no question about it, and we needed him to step up like that. But you know, it was great to see our defensive backs in general get off of blocks and make plays and prevent the big pass play. You know, and I think what Ferris did offensively, they had a good attack. They ran the heck out of the quarterback. He had a bunch of carries. There was no doubt who they wanted to carry the ball. And you know, when you carry the ball that many times, obviously, you know, you're going to get hit a lot of times, and we were able to make that hit, get the strip, and get the ball back.
And again, you talk about the secondary. 3 different times they matched up D'Angelo Perez against the much bigger physical Kevin Durant, the wide receiver for Ferris, and all 3 times he won that matchup. So again, as you talked about that, some things jump out statistically, but those were 3 individual battles, and D'Angelo won all 3 of them.
Exactly, and then if you really evaluate the whole game, D'Angelo didn't do just a good job of covering him on those pass plays. They wanted to single up on him, but he did a great job playing off blocks on the option and making tackles, as did Dave Toussaint on the edge. So as I said, you look at individual effort statistically, and there's some things that stand out, but the things you don't see in the statistics, like you said, JJ, stand out as well. And I thought overall that secondary played really well.
And switching to the offensive side of the football, again, great all-around game from Tim Hogue, the senior running back, a former Ferris State player. He wound up with, I think, 251 all-purpose yards. He had 2 touchdowns receiving, another 1 rushing, and then in regulation, he also set up the field goal with a great kickoff return. So essentially, he accounted almost for all your points in regulation.
Well, Tim had a great game. And the interesting thing was when I asked him about the fact that we were playing Ferris State, he said he got all that out of his mind last year. And this year, he's just focusing on being the best he could. So there wasn't any extra motivation other than the fact that I think Tim has really stepped up and realized how good he can be. And if he plays to that potential on every single play, he can be a big factor in our offense. And he definitely was.
He certainly had an outstanding game and drew rave reviews from a lot of people after the game. And again, on a night when not everything goes perfectly, you look at the numbers, and John Jennings, who people are talking about, boy, he just wasn't as sharp as he normally is, but he still threw for over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns.
And that's one of the things that stands out the most is that, we missed some throws. We had a couple passes that were dropped, but when it was crunch time and we had to make things happen, we had to convert, our guys stepped up and converted. John, obviously, the run on 4th and 1, he muscled himself in there. He made some great passes that extended drives, and then obviously the pass to Tim was on an all-out blitz to tie the game, and then the pass in overtime was a great execution of that play. So, I think you look at the course of that game, and we didn't always get it done in the body of the game, but when it absolutely had to get done in the clutch situations, our guys came through.
And again, a situation where, you always say if you can just hang around and keep yourself in the football game, you can turn it around late, and that's what you were able to do.
And some games are going to go like that. And I thought a game that went like that a little bit was Findlay, but Findlay, we just ran out of time, and then even gave them the ball back and they had a chance. But you look at that game that happened this past weekend, and what you saw was great character. Guys didn't quit. They hung in there. They kept battling. There wasn't any finger pointing. It was just, guys picking each other up, making sure they got it done. There was a great will to win, and that's what you got to see.
And again, a good job by the defense to kind of stick with it as well, because they were on the field a lot in that 3rd quarter. And as you said, when you're running against the option, everybody gets fatigued pretty easily because you can run a lot from sideline to sideline, but they were able to come up with big plays for you in the 4th quarter.
Exactly. And you really felt for them because I thought they did a great job in that 3rd quarter. As I said, I think offensively we had 9 plays total in that 3rd quarter, not a first down. We just were really struggling. But the defense kept hanging in there, and they didn't make it easy on Ferris. Ferris ended up scoring, but it wasn't, right down the field. There weren't a lot of big plays. They made them earn it, and I think when you play like that, it takes its toll physically on both teams. And I thought we played very physical, especially up front. And because of that, I think we were able to hang around, hang in the game, force the mistakes, force the turnovers, then capitalize on them.
And then in a game where there are no sacks in regulation, you come up with 2 in the overtime session.
Huge. And that was the whole key all game long, is to try to force some 3rd and longs and obviously 4th and long. And when you can do that, you can get the upper hand and just pin your ears back and rush the quarterback. And earlier in the game, we'd given up a screen pass on a 3rd and long, so our guys were really making sure they were disciplined in their pass rush lanes, but then did pin their ears back on that 4th and long and came up with that big sack.
So again, a good job there. But once again, now you've gone through 5 games in the season. Your offensive line has not given up even 1 sack. So I know that you don't want to jinx those things, but at the same time, it bears mention because you've thrown the ball a lot.
We knock on wood when we make those comments, JJ, but the bottom line is they've done a great job, and it's really 3 things. Number one, and I think that was their best game in terms of protecting the quarterback when you really evaluated everything. But I think they're playing with great effort, the preparation, being ready for what the other team throws at you is the other big part of it. And then the third area is our quarterback's getting rid of the ball and making good decisions. You know, when there is pressure, he gets rid of it quick or takes off and runs and avoids the sack, and that's the way you got to play.
And they did a good job against a Ferris State team that came in with a conference leader in sacks. So again, as you said, a good job not just in terms of their execution, but in terms of who they were playing against.
Absolutely, and that's why I said I think it was their best game all along, because for the most part, the front four didn't get any pressure. The couple times they got pressure on us and forced a quick throw or forced John out of the pocket was on the blitz. And so we can keep protecting like that, we're going to be in good shape.
We'll see if SVSU can continue that as they get the 31-24 overtime victory over Ferris State. Up next, SVSU takes the short trip over to Northwood for the Axe Bowl. We'll review that a little bit later on with head coach Jim Collins, but when we come back, we'll be joined by running backs coach Andre Griffin. That's next on SVSU Red Alert.
This week's female Spring Hill Suites Athlete of the Week is Lauren Hill. Hill, a senior runner on the SVSU women's cross-country team, recorded a first-place finish at the 5,000-meter Lansing Community College Invitational on Friday at Grand Wood Park. Hill took home first-place honors, crossing the line in 18:02.8, 13 seconds ahead of her nearest competitor. The Lady Cardinals won the event with 29 points, 45 points better than Hope College, who finished runner-up. In the two previous events this season, Lauren finished 10th of 52 at the CMU Invite and 86th of 309 at the MSU Invite. Lauren Hill, your Spring Hill Suites Female Athlete of the Week.
Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. I'm JJ Boehm, joined by SVSU running backs coach Andre Griffin. Andre, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, JJ.
And we get to have you on the week when Tim Hogue scores 3 touchdowns for Saginaw Valley. Really had an outstanding game against Ferris State.
Yeah, definitely. Tim Hogue's been coming along. He's had a good game against Malone, then right along down the line, and he's doing a great job in the kickoff return game, and we got him involved in the passing game also.
And again, I know you work with that kickoff return unit, so you're pleased to see him doing that, because really his kickoff return in the third quarter was key, because that led to a field goal, and those were the only points SVSU scored in that quarter.
Yes, like Coach Collins alluded to, we had three and outs, and actually we was 3 and out on that one, but we had a 57-yard kick return. They tried to kick it short, actually, and I was telling the up guys to be ready for it, but he got through there, got good crease, guys got great blocks, and he got up the field, and that was a great return for us, because we needed those points to come to at the end.
And I know as a running back, you've always got to be ready for anything, because as you said, 2 of his touchdowns come as a receiver, and so you've got to be ready, if necessary, to catch the ball out of the backfield.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We harp on catching the ball out the backfield, and I want to get actually more involved. I want to do some more man routes and stuff like that. But it was good to see him come out. And when he was at Ferris, he was a receiver. So he's used to catching balls. He's actually run some post routes and smash routes and stuff like that. So he's a great receiver coming out the backfield, and we need to use him a little bit more.
And then your other senior, Ronnie Lark, hasn't got as many carries as probably you would have expected going into this point in the season. But I look at his performance in each of the last 2 games. He's had an outstanding and very critical block, because he made the block on the 4th down play in overtime that allowed Jennings to get the 1st down. And the previous week, he had a great block downfield on Deion Joby's touchdown.
Definitely. He's a senior, 5th-year senior, and he understands. He was the guy a couple years ago, and he knows when I have a guy rolling, I'm going to try to keep that guy rolling. And being a senior leader, he knows to get in there and block and play with great effort, and he's doing a great job of it, and he's holding his head up and getting his team up on the sideline, so he's doing a good job of that.
And I think that's something that speaks to the character of a football team. When you have a senior, again, who's been the #1 guy and now isn't in that position, but when he goes out there, still finds a way to contribute.
Yes, he's done a great job, and as you know, as we talked in the past, I try to keep my guys close and keep them involved and keep them into the game, and he's doing a great job, and the other guys are doing a great job too, and they're not getting as many carries or anything like that, but they're doing a great job cheering them on and cheering Tim on and getting involved in the special teams and stuff like that.
And I know that the home crowd hasn't got a chance to see some of those other guys as much because those games have been close, but it looks like when you start looking down the road, you've got sophomore Jamon Martin, who got his first touchdown earlier this year, David Drummond, a true freshman. Those guys are stepping in and showing they can play as well.
Yes, they're on the kickoff return. We kept Tim in more on the kickoff return just because we needed some bigger plays, but those guys are the main kickoff returners for us. And Jamon's got in. He got one play last week, but he did a good job. He checked down, and he did a great job, so he scored 100% on the game. And David Drummond is fearless, and he's going to be one to watch in the future. He's going to be great for us.
And I know that we talked about the fact that SVSU hasn't allowed any sacks, and the offensive line deserves a lot of credit for that, but that comes down to blitz pickup too.
Definitely. Everybody knows that's my #1 goal. Just like I tell everybody, if you get number 11 hit, that's going to be my butt. So we got to keep them clean and get into protection. So we work on that day in, day out.
I know that that's something that's very important to you, as is building that camaraderie among the running backs unit, because as you said, you don't know who it's going to be on any given Saturday, and if somebody gets into a rhythm, you're going to try and keep getting them the football.
Yes, that's definitely. As long as they keep running, I'm going to keep them going. So, I like to keep it rotating going, to keep them fresh, but if they roll, we're going to keep them rolling.
So what does it take, in your eyes, to be a successful running back in this offense?
In this offense, you got to be able to catch, definitely, and you definitely have to be able to block and be able to read the blocks. Because in the zone offense, you need to press the tackle on outside zone and get upfield, or press if he gets a hook and get outside of that. So you have to be able to read the blocks real quick and get downfield and make people miss. That's the main thing, and that's what Tim is doing a great job of, is making people miss this year.
And that's something that I know you can work on a little bit, but a lot of that I think is just instinctive as well.
It's just natural ability. That's what you look for when you recruit them. They have to make people miss. When you recruit them, and they have to make plays and run hard. Speed is power. That's one of my biggest things that I always talk about. No matter how fast you run, as long as you run that speed at somebody, nobody's going to want to hit you square up, and it's hard to hit them square up.
Well, hopefully all of this continues to go well and SVSU continues to see results on the field. Andre Griffin, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it, JJ.
And when we come back, we'll be joined by SVSU cross-country coach Tony Filipek. That's next on SVSU Red Alert. Saginaw Valley State University, where students learn in personal classroom settings and state-of-the-art labs, where students make a difference in Michigan's Great Lakes Bay region and study the world. A place where we celebrate red pride. Saginaw Valley State University. Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. I'm JJ Boehm, joined now by SVSU cross-country coach Tony Filipek. Tony, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
And first of all, let's give people kind of an update to where the team has been at this point. You've had 3 meets thus far, and including one where I think both the men and the women came out on top.
That's correct. We started off in CMU, and then we went to MSU, 2 pretty competitive meets with some Division I teams there. We got the rust out in those meets, worked on some team strategy, and then we went over to Lansing, a small invitational, mostly community college teams there for the most part. But it was a huge confidence booster at this point in the season, about midway, 3 weeks from conference. It was a huge confidence booster to go in there and get the W's on the women's side and also on the men's side.
And I want to pick up on something you mentioned. You talked about strategy, because a lot of times people think about cross country. They don't think there's any strategy involved. You just go out and run as fast as you can for a long distance. But I know that strategy is definitely a part of it.
Yes, I'll start off with the women's side right now. Our strategy on the women's side is for the majority of the girls to stick together in a group for at least the first mile. Their race is a 5K or a 6K. 6K at conferences and regionals and nationals, but they run quite a bit of 5Ks. But for the first mile out of the 3 or 3.75, if you're talking about the 6K, we try to get the group to stay as close as possible. After that, our two killers are our two big runners. You've got Emily Short and Lauren Hill. We want them to go for it at that point, to really go for it, and for the veterans of the second group to hold that second group together and finish as close as possible. Now on the guys' side, we don't want anybody to really get too carried away the first mile in. They have a 5-mile race for their 8K, so we try to keep them as tightly packed through all the way through to mile 3. After that, we can really start. Whoever's really feeling good that day can go for it, and the others can go with them and stay as close as possible. But on the guy side, there's anywhere from 5 to 7 guys that could be that top guy, and that's kind of the strategy involved. And we have to also communicate throughout the races.
Because distance running really is kind of a science unto itself in terms of trying to figure out how you're going to be able to run your best time, but also make sure that you do finish well as a group. Because if you have somebody go out and post a good time, but then everybody else is at the back of the pack, that's not going to help your team result.
Correct. And the way we're going to beat teams this year, the way we're going to beat teams that we're really not supposed to beat is that type of running. Is to really stay very close as a unit and communicate with each other and push all the way through to the end, to get those the end scores down. As you know, we need to as an overall team, we need a lower score to be victorious. As if the higher you are, the worst overall team position you are.
You had a very successful career yourself here as an SVSU student athlete. Give people some insight into what it takes in terms of the training required to be successful at this level.
Well, there's a jump from high school to college. There's definitely a transition coming in as a freshman. But as a college competitor, the intensity really picks up. The intensity picks up a whole lot. And then you need to have the ability to transition to that, to find the balance from school and athletics and be able to handle that new added intensity and just really have a positive attitude in an environment that you might not be used to. And those are, if you're able to do that, the athletes that are able to do that are the ones that are very, very successful.
Well, hopefully we continue to enjoy some success. I know you have some big meets coming up. Tony Filipek, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And when we come back, we'll be rejoined by SVSU football coach Jim Collins. That's next on SVSU Red Alert.
This week, Spring Hill Suites Male Athlete of the Week is Tim Hogue. Hogue, a senior running back on the number 16 ranked SVSU football team, put the Cardinal offense on his back when they needed it most in a thrilling victory over Ferris State this past weekend, 31-24 in overtime. Hogue caught a 15-yard touchdown pass from Jonathan Jennings as SVSU took the 7-3 lead early in the second quarter. Hogue hit Pater 3 minutes later on an 8-yard scamper to give the Cardinals a 14-3 edge. Tim came through in a clutch with a 13-yard reception from Jennings with 1:25 left in regulation to knot up the contest and to send the game into overtime, when the Cardinals would prevail 31-24. Hogue finished the contest with 3 touchdowns and 251 all-purpose yards. Tim Hogue, this week's Spring Hill Suites Male Athlete of the Week.
Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. The SVSU football team finishes the month of September with a 4-1 record, and now they move into October and will take on their rivals from Northwood in the Axe Bowl. And Coach Collins, doesn't get any easier. Northwood comes into this one 4-1 also.
Well, you know, JJ, you talk about the month of October, and this is a big month, and obviously the Axe Bowl to start out is huge, and it's at Northwood, and it's a big game every year, and Northwood's playing really well. They're 4-1 as well, and you know, it's going to be a battle as usual, and we've got to play well to win the game.
Northwood got off to a 4-0 start, lost last Saturday at home to Wayne State 21-11 in a game where, again, Wayne State got a big lead on them, and that's not what an option team wants to see. So I'm sure that that's something that they're going to be working to correct, but at the same time, you'll try to follow that formula.
Well, you know, if you really study the Wayne State-Northwood game, Northwood moved the ball quite a bit in the first half, but just couldn't get points. Had a field goal and then a couple turnovers, but they did move it. And, you know, the key thing is to keep it in check, make sure you prevent the big play, tackle, be physical, and then offensively you got to get points on the board.
And how much does it make a difference now that you keep seeing option teams, because you really look at the way your schedule has fallen to this point in the season, and you've seen several of them?
You know, and Northwood's actually changed a little bit, but still running the option out of the shotgun, so it'll be probably similar to what Ferris did with a couple different wrinkles of their own. You know, I think it's really, there's a lot of carryover, so it's been good that we've seen option, and this probably will be the last of it as we move on to the second half of the season. But I think defensively it really shores up your responsibilities. Guys have a complete understanding of who they have, dive, pitch, quarterback, and so forth, and play action. So I don't know if it's an advantage per se, but it definitely is a familiarity that we will take.
Talk to people, too, about this Axe Bowl rivalry, because I think that's one of those things that until you get a chance to really experience it, now you've had a few chances as head coach to experience it, that is something that really means a lot to the players and the coaches on both sides.
Absolutely.
Paul Spicer, after 12, 13 seasons or whatever he played in the NFL, still talking about the Axe Bowl.
Well, he's got a Super Bowl ring, but he wanted to get a look at that axe again.
So SVSU will be playing Northwood, and again, a team, as you said, they've got their quarterback back. He was injured for part of last season. That certainly was part of why they struggled last year. So obviously you'll look to contain him, but I know they've been getting good play from the fullback position as well.
Cameron Jackson has been really strong for them in the running game, and Shavers is a good quarterback. So, you know, those two guys right there are really explosive players, and they're both physical guys as well. So you got to contain those two, and then obviously the big play in the passing game is what they like. They like to hit that big pass on you when they get everybody sucked up into the box. So we've got to be very disciplined, and then we've got to be physical and running the football.
Switching to the offensive side of the football, what do you do to try to get the passing game back in sync? Again, you don't want to belabor it because it wasn't a terrible night. It's just not up to some of the standards to which we've become accustomed. So what do you do to try and get that back in rhythm and get those receivers and quarterback just in better sync?
Well, first of all, it's going to take a lot of hard work, and you know, you can't ever assume anything. Just because you have you play well on one Saturday doesn't mean it's going to carry over to the next. So we've got to work hard in practice. We've got to get in sync. But then the other part of it is really playing to our strengths. And what we did well on Saturday is we took what they gave us. We didn't force the deep ball. The week before, we threw a lot of deep balls, and Ferris did a great job of taking away the deep ball, but we were very efficient when we were throwing the ball short to the back out of the backfield and our guys on short passes. So I think it's take what the defense gives you. Don't force the ball into low percentage situations. And then obviously I think, you know, the key part is you still got to be able to throw it and catch it, and we got to do a better job of that.
Hopefully all of that comes together. We're looking forward to a good matchup with Northwood. Coach Collins, good luck.
Thanks, JJ.
And we thank you for joining us, and we hope you have enjoyed this edition of SVSU Red Alert.